There is a plant growing no more than a few steps from where you sleep tonight, and it holds something your aching joints have been waiting for. I am not talking about another pill. I am not talking about another injection that costs you more than a week's wages and leaves you wondering if it did anything at all. I am talking about a remedy so old, so trusted, that your great-grandmother likely knew it by name, even if the world has done its best to make you forget. The plant is comfrey, and for generations, the Amish have turned to it when joints grow stiff, when knees refuse to bend the way they used to, and when the simple act of climbing a porch step feels like a punishment. By the time we finish here today, you will know exactly what comfrey does inside your body, how to prepare it the way we have always prepared it, and why this quiet little plant may do more for your joints than anything sitting in your medicine cabinet. Before we go any further, do me a kindness. Tell me your age down in the comments. I would like to know who I am speaking with today, because this remedy matters most to the ones who need it most, and I want to be sure I am talking to you. My name is Amos Stoltzfus. I have spent the better part of 30 years as a remedy keeper in our community, learning the plants the way my grandmother taught me, the way her mother taught her, passing the knowledge along the same way you would pass along a good tool, hand to hand, with care, and with the expectation that it will be put to honest use. I do not have a degree hanging on a wall. I have something I trust a good deal more, and that is a lifetime of watching these remedies work with my own eyes, in the hands of plain, hard-working people who did not have the luxury of a pharmacy on every corner. Now let me tell you what is happening inside your joints when they start to ache and creak and swell the way they do. Think of a door hinge on an old barn. When that hinge is new and well-oiled, it swings smooth and easy, no sound, no resistance. But you leave that hinge out in the weather long enough, you let the rain and the frost get to it year after year, and what happens? The metal starts to wear, the oil dries out, the hinge gets stiff, it grinds, it fights you every time you try to open that door. That is what is happening in your knees, your hips, your fingers, your shoulders. The cartilage, that soft cushion between your bones, it wears thin over time. The fluid that keeps everything gliding smooth dries up little by little. And then the inflammation sets in, like rust creeping across iron, and every movement reminds you that something is not right. Modern medicine will hand you a bottle of pills that calms the pain for a few hours, but does nothing, not one thing, to rebuild what has worn away. And that is the difference. That is why I want you to hear me clearly today. Because comfrey does not just quiet the pain, it helps the body do what it was always meant to do, which is repair itself. Comfrey has been called knit bone for longer than anyone alive can remember. That name did not come from a laboratory. It came from people watching what happened when they laid comfrey on a swollen joint or a stubborn injury that would not mend. The swelling would ease. The stiffness would soften. The joint would begin to move again, slowly, gently, the way a frozen stream begins to flow again in the first warm days of spring. The old herbalists understood this long before anyone had a word for it, but we know now that comfrey contains something called allantoin, a compound that encourages the body to grow new cells, to knit tissue back together, to rebuild what time and labor have broken down. It also carries rosmarinic acid, which calms inflammation the way a cool cloth calms a fever. And that is why the Amish used it. Not because someone told them to, because they saw the results with their own eyes, season after season, generation after generation. In our community, comfrey is not some exotic thing you have to send away for. It grows along fence lines and at the edges of gardens. It has broad, rough leaves and drooping clusters of purple or white flowers, and once it takes root, it stays. It is a faithful plant, and the way we have used it for joints, the method I want to share with you today, is a comfrey poultice. This is the very preparation my grandmother showed me when I was not yet old enough to reach the top shelf where she kept her remedy jars. Here is how you make it. You take a generous handful of fresh comfrey leaves. If you do not have fresh leaves, Dried will do, but fresh is what I reach for first. You chop those leaves fine, almost to a pulp, and you place them in a bowl. Then you pour just enough hot water over them to soften everything and make a thick, warm paste. Not boiling water, mind you. Warm, comfortable to the touch. You spread that paste onto a clean cloth, a piece of muslin or cotton, something soft, and you lay it directly over the joint that has been troubling you, your knee, your wrist, your shoulder, wherever the ache has settled in. You wrap it gently, just snug enough to hold, and you let it sit for 30 to 45 minutes. Do this in the evening when the work of the day is done and you can sit still and let the remedy do its work. Many in our community do this 3 or 4 times a week, and they will tell you, as they have told me, that within a couple of weeks the stiffness begins to soften and the swelling pulls back like a tide going out. I think of my neighbor, Ruth. She is 73 now, a woman who has worked her whole life, and I mean real work, the kind that leaves your hands rough and your back knowing the meaning of every hour. A few years ago, her knees got so bad she could barely make it from the kitchen to the porch without stopping to catch her breath and wait for the pain to pass. She had been to the English doctors. They gave her pills that upset her stomach and told her she might need surgery down the road. Ruth did not want surgery. She came to me one afternoon, and I made her a comfrey poultice the way I am telling you now. I showed her how to prepare it herself. She used it faithfully every evening, wrapping her knees and sitting in her chair by the window while the light faded. After about 3 weeks, she walked to my door and stood there smiling and said, "Amos, I climbed my stairs this morning without holding the rail. That is not a miracle. That is a plant doing what it has always done, and a woman trusting the old ways enough to let it. If this is bringing you comfort, if this feels like the kind of knowledge you have been looking for, I would be grateful if you tapped that subscribe button and stayed with me a while. I have more remedies to share, and I think you will find them just as useful. Now there is another way to use comfrey for your joints, and this one is especially good for hands and fingers that have grown stiff and sore. You make a comfrey oil. Take dried comfrey leaves, fill a jar about halfway, and pour a good carrier oil over them. Olive oil is what we use most often. Seal the jar and set it in a warm place. A windowsill that catches the afternoon sun is just right, and let it sit for 4 to 6 weeks. Strain the leaves out through a piece of cheesecloth, and what you have left is a rich, dark oil that carries the healing properties of the comfrey right into it. Rub a small amount into your knuckles, your wrists, the base of your thumb, wherever the joints feel tight and swollen. Do this morning and evening. The oil soaks into the skin and carries the allantoin and the rosmarinic acid right where they are needed most. Some of the older women in our community keep a small jar of comfrey oil by the bedside, the way the English world keeps a bottle of lotion, and they will tell you their hands are more limber for it. Now I want to be honest with you, because honesty is the only currency worth anything. Comfrey is a powerful plant, and powerful things deserve respect. We use comfrey on the outside of the body, on the skin, over the joint. That is the tradition in our community, and it is the safe and sensible way. Go slow. Listen to your body. If your skin is broken or raw, let it heal before you apply a poultice or an oil. And while I trust the old remedies with my whole heart, I also believe in good judgment. If your pain is severe, if something does not feel right, talk to someone you trust about your health. There is no weakness in that. The old ways and good sense have always walked side by side. One more thing I want you to understand about comfrey, because this is part of what makes it so special for aging joints. Inflammation, that swelling and heat that settles into a joint and makes every movement feel like sandpaper on raw wood, it is not just painful. It is destructive. It breaks down the cartilage faster. It thickens the fluid. It makes everything worse, day by day, like a slow fire burning inside the joint. Comfrey helps calm that fire. The rosmarinic acid works to quiet the inflammation, and when the inflammation quiets, the body has a chance to do what it does best, which is heal. That is the piece that pills so often miss. They mask the pain, but they do not put out the fire. Comfrey goes after the fire itself, and that is why the Amish have kept this plant close for as long as anyone can remember. There is a rhythm to healing that the modern world has forgotten. It is not fast. It is not instant. It is steady, the way a good season unfolds, the way a garden grows. You do not plant a seed and dig it up the next morning to see if it has sprouted. You trust the soil, you trust the rain, you trust the sun, and you give it time. That is how comfrey works. You prepare it with your own hands. You apply it with patience. You come back to it day after day, and you let the plant and your body do what they know how to do together. That patience is part of the remedy. It always has been. So let me leave you with this. If your joints have been aching, if your knees are stiff in the morning, if your fingers do not bend the way they once did, comfrey may be the friend you have been looking for. A simple poultice of chopped leaves laid warm over the joint. A slow steeped oil rubbed into the hands and knuckles. Old preparations, trusted by generations of plain people who had no use for anything that did not work. This plant has earned its name, knitbone. It knits together what time has pulled apart, and it does so gently, without a single side effect that keeps you up at night reading a warning label. I am glad you sat with me today. If you would like to hear more of the old remedies, the ones that have kept our community well for longer than most folks can remember, subscribe to this channel and come back soon. I have another remedy to share with you next time, one that may surprise you, and I think you will want to hear it. Until then, be well. Be patient with yourself, and trust that your body knows more about healing than you have been led to believe.